New York is a state in the United States, and it's pretty big. Like so big that it's got mountains, beaches, farms, and one of the most congested cities on Earth, all crammed into one state. If you ever get lost, just head for the place where everybody's trying to live on top of each other for some reason, New York City. But let's go way back, before the skyscrapers, before the pizza, before every cab ride was an exercise in negotiation. There's a bunch of indigenous people chilling in villages all over the region. They're living off the land, fishing, farming, and generally having a good time. The Iroquois Confederacy? Yeah, that was a thing. They basically invented democracy before it was cool, running a whole system of government where people actually listen to each other. Crazy, right? Then one day, here comes a boat from Europe, and on it is Henry Hudson. He's cruising up this river looking around like,
dang, wow, this place is pretty nice.
He sticks a flag in the ground and declares,
hey, this river is cool, let's name it after me.
And that's how the Hudson River got its name. Genius branding. Soon enough, Europeans start showing up in waves.
Where's all the beaver fur?
Asks the Dutch, who had somehow heard New York was the place to be for, furry hats.
We want that.
And so they start building this little thing called New Amsterdam in the early 1600s, thinking they're pretty hot stuff. They set up a trading post, probably thinking they were starting a futuristic colony like in Star Wars. Not quite, but close enough.
Hey, we bought this land for some beads and trinkets,
they say. The Lenape, the indigenous group that's actually living here, are like,
no you didn't. What are you even talking about?
But the Dutch just do what they do, setting up their little city on Manhattan Island, thinking they got a great deal. So New Amsterdam is born. The Dutch are chillin', trading goods, and the whole place smells like fish because, well, it's a port city. The Dutch build some windmills, probably eat a lot of cheese, and pat themselves on the back for being progressive Europeans. Then, surprise, the British show up.
Hey, nice city,
says the British,
eyeing all the trade and wealth. It's ours now.
And just like that, New Amsterdam becomes New York. The British just straight up rebrand it like they're renaming a failed tech startup. The Dutch are like, okay, whatever, and just leave, probably off to colonize somewhere else. Fast forward a bit, and the place is growing like crazy. There's farms, trading posts, and all the usual colonial stuff. But there's a storm brewing. It's the late 1700s, and there's this revolution thing happening. You've got people in New York walking around saying stuff like,
yo, Britain, can you stop being so controlling?
And Britain, being Britain, is like,
nope.
So George Washington comes in with his army and says,
hey, it's time for you guys to leave.
The British, who weren't the best sports about losing, burn a few things on their way out. Classic British exit strategy. Burn and bounce. Now it's the late 1700s, and New York's kind of figuring out how to be American. They're free from Britain, but they have no idea what they're doing. Enter Alexander Hamilton, a guy who shows up with a lot of ideas about finance and national banks. Hamilton's all like,
hey guys, let's create a national bank and figure out this whole money thing.
Because up until then, people were just trading goats or something. He also helps write the Federalist Papers, because apparently the Constitution needed footnotes. Meanwhile, New York is booming. Immigrants are showing up from all over Europe. The population is exploding, and it's getting crowded, really crowded. So what do? They invent Central Park.
We need some green space so people don't lose their minds in all these buildings,
someone says. So they plop a giant patch of nature right in the middle of the chaos. And people are like, thank God, we can finally see some grass. Then the Erie Canal happens in the 1820s. Boom! New York goes from being just another port city to a trade powerhouse.
Hey, we can now move stuff from the Great Lakes all the way to the Atlantic Ocean,
they say. This is a big deal because before this, you basically had to drag a wagon over mountains if you wanted to trade anything. Other cities are super jealous. But New York is like, sorry, we're just built different. By the 19th century, immigration is in full swing. Italians, Irish, Germans, they're all showing up, and Ellis Island is packed. People get off the boats and immediately have to spell their last name 20 different ways for confused immigration officers.
Welcome to America,
says the Statue of Liberty, standing there with her big torch. Also, can you build some railroads and skyscrapers while you're here? And so they do. Now the skyline is popping up with big buildings. Big buildings. The Empire State Building shows up, towering over everything like it owns the place. And people are like,
whoa, The future is now.
And don't forget Broadway. Now, New York is full of actors singing about everything, from romance to politics to, I don't know, cats or something. Meanwhile, down on Wall Street, a bunch of guys in suits are like, hey, let's invent the stock market. And then, a few years later, they go, oh no, we accidentally broke it, which causes the Great Depression in 1929. People lose jobs, lose money, and some guy in a top hat probably walks into the ocean with a suitcase full of Monopoly money. Fast forward to the 1940s, and World War II is happening. New York is booming again, but now it's all about helping with the war effort. People are building things, selling things, and Times Square is lighting up like it's a giant Christmas tree. After the war, New York's like, okay, let's get back to winning. And the Yankees are like, sure, we'll help, and proceed to win every baseball championship ever for the next few decades because New York needs to dominate everything. Now it's the 1970s, and New York is kind of falling apart. The city's dirty, crime is high, and people are like, are we still cool? But out of the grime rises two new musical styles, disco and hip-hop. Disco takes over the clubs and everyone's dancing like they're in a music video. At the same time, hip-hop is born in the Bronx, and the whole world changes. It's like a cultural 1-2 punch. Meanwhile, Times Square becomes super sketchy. It's all adult theaters and shady characters. People are like, can we maybe clean this up a bit? And eventually, they do. But for a while there, it was definitely dicey. Fast forward again to the 90s, and things are looking much better. The crime rate drops, Broadway is back with more shows than ever, and Wall Street is booming once again because apparently no one learned from the whole Great Depression thing. Oh, and there's the internet. People are like, wait,
You're telling me I can order pizza online without having to talk to anyone?
perfect. New York adapts fast because, well, it's New York. Then, in 2001, tragedy strikes. 9/11 happens, and the whole world is shaken. The Twin Towers, which had been symbols of New York's power and skyline, are gone. But New York, being New York, the city rallies. Firefighters, police officers, and ordinary citizens come together, showing the world what resilience looks like. Soon after, they start rebuilding the skyline. Hello, Freedom Tower. Now, it's the 21st century, and New York is, well, still New York. Full of billionaires, social media influencers, and people constantly rushing somewhere important. The subway is still a mess. Seriously, it hasn't improved since they built it, but it's ironic, so no one seems to care. Plus, it's underground, so you don't have to deal with traffic. The rent is too damn high. Gentrification is sweeping through every neighborhood, and Brooklyn is full of artisanal coffee shops and bakeries. But no matter what, New York stays at the center of the universe when it comes to fashion, finance, culture, and pizza slices bigger than your head. People keep showing up saying, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. And somehow, they do. Whether it's Broadway performers or Wall Street brokers or just someone trying to pay rent without selling in Oregon, New Yorkers are hustling, always. And now, New York's future? Who knows? Probably more skyscrapers, more pizza, and more people trying to find an apartment under $3,000 a month. But one thing's for sure, no matter what happens, New York will keep going because, well, it's New York. It always does.